let me introduce myself. My name's Kelley. I'm a college freshman at Clemson University. I'm a psych major, and I took AP Lit last year. So I really enjoyed that class. It was one of the best classes I've ever taken. And today we're going to cover multiple choice strategies and practice. I know multiple choice is nobody's favorite on that exam. It's long, there's lots of stuff to read, and it's quite difficult, but I've compiled a list of things that I think could help. And then we're going to go through some practice too. And then if you like what you're seeing, or if you want to learn more about Fiveable, get alerts about new streams and stuff, follow Think Fiveable on Twitter and Instagram, and then subscribe to Think Fiveable on YouTube. Today in this stream, we're going to cover time efficiency. So not how to not run out of time, because time is of the essence during the AP Lit exam. You don't have a ton of time for the stuff that you're given. So I've compiled a list of things to really remember when you're going through the multiple choice section, to make sure that you're not scrambling to fill in the last 10 bubbles with 3 minutes left, because that would not be good. We're going to go through some annotating strategies, because annotating the strategy, or annotating, hi, I can't talk today, apparently. Annotating the prompts that they give you, or like the articles or prose or poem or whatever you're reading, is so important in answering the questions, because you can like go through and underline, and then when you see a question that you that talks about something you underlined, you can just flip back to it and answer it and then keep going. And then picking an answer, which is the hardest part and most important part of the entire multiple choice section. I'll just go through some things, trying like process of elimination, and just trying to pick the best answer that you possibly can with what you're given. And then I'll go through two practice. One is one that I created myself, and then the next one, or the following one, is actually an example from College Board that we will just go through. And then I will leave time at the end for any questions or any questions that you may have, and I'll do my best to answer them. But if you have a question during the stream at any time, just drop them in the Ask a Question little button on the bottom, or type it in the chat and I'll respond. Okay, so how to be efficient with your time. Being efficient with your time is so important. Like I said before, I think you're given about 60 or 70 minutes to finish the multiple choice section of the AP Lit exam. And that's not a whole lot of time, considering how long the prose or the poem is that they give you, and they give you like 6 or 7. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's really, really important to be on top of the clock, to make sure that, like I said, you aren't scrambling to read the last passage in 3 minutes and answer all the questions, because trust me, that's not fun for anybody. So read the questions before you start reading the passage. This is what I did for when I took my AP exam, and I found that it was super duper helpful to kind of like read the little information bit above the article to kind of know what it was about, and then look at the questions and kind of be like, okay, this is what I need to look for, this is what I need to underline, and try and piece together anything that could help me answer a question. What also helped me in both my AP Lit exam and my SAT and ACT, this also helped. So if you're past that, great. But if you're not, if you're taking it for the first time or you're retaking it, answer specific questions first. The ones that say in lines 8 to 12 or in the second paragraph, so you don't have to read the entire passage before answering the questions, because if you like spend time reading the passage and really trying to understand it before you answer any questions, that might not be the best use of your time. If you can look at a question, see, oh, it's just about these 4 lines, read the 4 lines, answer the question, and move on, then that would like give you a little bit of a time advantage. And of course, there are going to be questions that ask about the passage as a whole, like the entire thing. And that's when you need to read the whole thing. But if it's asking for specific questions, like in lines blank to blank, then I would recommend just doing those first. And Annotate the passage. Please annotate the passage. This is so important. There are so many words in that passage, and it's so easy to get lost with your eyes, just trying to read it all, find where you saw that one simile, or find where you saw that one thing that is the answer to the question, and you can't find it, and you spend like 3 minutes looking for it. That's not going to be a good use of your time, because like I said, you aren't given a lot of it. So annotating and reading or and underlining things as you go about looking at the passage is really, really important. And here are some annotating strategies that I have used myself, that other people have used, that I've heard about, and that I think are really, really important in trying to get the most out of your annotation and get the most out of the passage that they give you. Underline phrases or words that can help you answer a question. This sounds like a gimme, but I know so many people who do not do this, and it's infuriating. So it's really important to do that. So if you're looking over the question and it tells you, why do you think the narrator in this passage thinks that blah, 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 thinks that cows are green? I'm not sure. And there's a part in there when you're going through and annotating and it says something about green cows, underline that so you can find that. And then you can go from there and look at sentences before or after that phrase and kind of piece together what you think would be the right answer. And then for more specific questions, like in lines blank to blank, put the prompted section in brackets so it will be easier to find later. Kind of like what I was just talking about. If it says in lines 8 to 12, go and find lines 8 to 12 and put them in brackets or underline them or something so you can easily go back to them and find them and answer the question. And you also won't get lost in a bunch of other words, because I know that it's really easy to get lost in the passage. So having those brackets there, like the little brackets, will help you just keep your eyes on those specific lines or that specific paragraph that they're wanting you to like, that they're wanting you to look at and analyze and answer the question about. Underline any other words or phrases that stand out to you. If you find like a literary device, like a simile or a metaphor, or a really good example of like juxtaposition or like an allegory or something like that, underline it, because there's probably going to be a question about lit devices somewhere in the exam. So it's really important to kind of like make a note of, hey, that's simile, or hey, that's personification, because it may pop up in a question later. See if you can identify parts of the passage that line up with an answer choice. Like when you flip the page and you're on a new passage and you're flipping through the questions and you see an answer choice while you're looking through, and then while you're annotating the passage, you see something, like you see a part of the passage that goes perfectly with that answer choice, underline it. So when you get to that question, you can go back and be like, oh, okay, here is that one part of the passage. Does it make sense for it to be an answer choice? Does it make sense for it to be the right answer? Yeah, it's kind of self-explanatory, but I didn't do this on my exam, and I totally should have, because it would have made my life so much easier. Yeah, it's not that difficult. I know a lot of people panic when they get to the AP Lit exam. Oh my gosh, this is like the hardest thing I'm ever going to have to do in my life. My brain's going to be fried. It's already fried from studying. Just don't panic when you get to this section. I know it's the first section. Don't panic, because that makes everything happening go, like you're completely scatterbrained. You don't know what's going on. You're, oh my gosh, how much time do I have left? What if I read the passage wrong? What if I skipped a line? What if I'm answering the wrong questions on the Scantron? I don't know. All the things that could go wrong are running through your head. Try not to focus on those. Try and like tell yourself, this is going to be great. I'm going to do awesome. And just really focus on reading and annotating the passage. Just a little tip from me there, because I know a lot of people that really struggled with that, and it showed on the exam. Okay, picking an answer choice. the most important part of the multiple choice section. Woohoo! Remember that College Board wants you to pick the best answer. All of the answers that they give you will probably be in some way, shape, or form correct, because that's College Board, and they love to do that. So really try and pick what you think is the most correct answer, because that will likely be the right answer in the long run. Use process of elimination. If you get to a question and you just know an answer is not right, like which one of these is not a farm animal, and it lists a Tyrannosaurus Rex, you know that's not a farm animal, so you can go ahead and scratch that one. That one's not the right answer. You can also do this by looking at, I know there are some questions on the exam that the answer choices refer back to certain parts of the passage, like certain lines, like 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and 9. Go and look at those and see if they fit into what they're asking you to answer. And if they don't at all, scratch it off. And then when you're left with 2, just really try and look at the answer choices that you have, and go back to the passage if you need to see if it fits right, or if there's a detail that you missed and you were like, there's like a eureka moment, like, oh, this is the right answer. Thank God. So that would be really important to do. Read the answers carefully, so carefully. I know people that misread the question and got the answer wrong, and consequently got like dependent questions later on wrong because they missed that one detail in the question. And I would really hate for that to be the defining factor in your score on the exam. That would just not be good. So yeah, read the answers carefully. I know that seems like a given, but you'd be surprised about how many people don't do that. There are so many people that do not do that. Yeah, is there anything I forgot or anything that I left out that you need me to talk about at all? I'm guessing that's no, so that's good. I think next is the practice that I kind of compiled here. So we're just going to go through that. If you have any questions, let me know in the Ask a Question bar, or just let me know in the chat, and I will be very happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, you're not going to have to read all of this. I'm going to kind of sum it up, and you'll see what I'm going to do with it later. But this passage here is from the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. I read this when I took AP Lit. It was one of my favorite books we read all year. And it is about this family of Christians, like Baptists, I think, that are going on a mission trip to the Belgian Congo in Africa in, I believe, the early 60s, late 50s, around that time period. And they were going, it's this family of a father, a mother, and 4 daughters. And then they get to the Belgian Congo in this little village, and they're there to spread the word, try and convert them to Christianity and out of their like native tribal ways. And that doesn't go over too well. And then all of the stuff, like all of the riots in the Belgian Congo start happening, and they're advised to leave. And Nathan Price, who is the father of the family, who is like the preacher, the main guy in the church, he's like, no, we're going to stay, and I'm going to spread the word of God. And it puts his entire family at risk. There's riots and disease and all of this crazy stuff that happens. It basically just hits the fan. And it's just all because he chose not to leave for the sake of his family and his own safety. And this specific passage is towards the end of the book, and the narrator is Orleana Price, who is the mother of the family. And she is talking about how her experience in the Congo was less than enjoyable, and like how regretful she was about agreeing to this and not standing up for herself. And she's just kind of low-spirited throughout the entire thing. So at the beginning, she's just talking about all the things that happened in the year 1960. And then throughout the passage, she's just talking about how her children didn't pay attention to her. She was kind of she was really lonely during this entire thing, mainly just because her husband was so adamant about spreading the word of God to the Congolese, who weren't extremely receptive of this. And he knew that, but he kept trying anyways. So yeah, that's basically what this passage is about. I will kind of let you skim it for a minute if you would like me to. I'll just give you about like 30 seconds maybe to just look through here, see if you can just kind of piece together what she's trying to say, and then I'll move on to what I'm going to talk about next. Okay, cool. So this is an example of some annotation that I did on this passage. You don't have to do exactly this. You can do more. You can do less. You can tailor it to your personal needs, personal taste, how crunched you are for time, etc. But this is just kind of what I highlighted. You'd underline it on the exam because you don't have highlighters. But so this is just a couple of examples that I'm going to explain as I go through. So on line 9, like the first two things that I highlighted were the phrases washed up and riptide. In the sentence, I had washed up there on the riptide of my husband's confidence and the undertow of my children's needs. So this is an example of diction, word choice that Orleana decided to use to kind of convey the severity of her situation, almost severity. Yeah, she uses these like washed up, riptide, undertow. They're very intense words that she could have used. She could have said, I landed there with balancing my husband's confidence and my children's needs or something like that. But she chose to use washed up, riptide, undertow, stuff like that to really show that she was she got the short end of the stick when she was on this mission trip in Africa. She got the short end of the stick. And then I highlighted shed me like a husk in line 13. In this sentence, it's my firstborn and my baby both tried to shed me like a husk. When they got there, they're like, Mom, we don't need you. We're going to do our own thing because we're in Africa now. We aren't in the United States. Whatever. And she said, shed me like a husk, because they were trying to just like get them off of her shoulders. And her firstborn was, I believe, about 15 or 16 at the time. And then her baby, which was her youngest, was about 5 years old. So there's a really big age difference there. And then later on in line 16, I highlighted hell hath no fury like a Baptist preacher. This is both a simile and I believe an oxymoron, but or irony, my bad, sorry. Obviously there's the comparing of hell's fury with a Baptist preacher, who is Nathan Price, her husband, and the irony of talking about hell and a Baptist preacher, because the entire point of preaching is to convey people and convert people to follow God's word or whatever and avoid hell's fury. So I highlighted that because that's kind of like a poignant part of the entire book as a whole, just because it talks about so much about Nathan's mission, what he wanted to do, how he wanted to do it, and how we actually went about it was really like forceful, and like the Congolese, almost like the Congolese didn't have a choice, even though that they did at the same time. So that's why I highlighted that. And then she goes on to say, like, I married a man who would never love me, probably because he was too wrapped up in his work. Yeah. And then on the top of the second section on the right side, that starts at 22, I saw a family of Weaverbirds work together for months on a nest that became such a monstrous lump of sticks and progeny and nonsense that finally it brought their whole tree thundering down. I personally thought this was a form of allegory, because this could represent something bigger, I think, at least. I think that it kind of represents the Price family's whole situation, where they were hopeful going into this mission. They were like, it's going to be great. We're going to talk about the church and the religion to all of these African people and convert them to what they believed was the only way to live at that time. Like the only way to get into heaven or whatever. And then when it talks about it became such a monstrous lump of sticks and progeny and nonsense that it brought the whole tree thundering down, I think that this is kind of leading towards the chaos that kind of ensues, the entropy that ensues when things start hitting the fan, when the Congolese aren't super receptive of the sermons that he's giving, and when they're advised to leave Africa, and Nathan Price says, no, we're staying, and everything just starts falling apart. The family is broken. There's lots of arguments. There's peril. It's a whole mess, like I said. It's a really good book, though. I'd highly recommend you read it. But yeah, that's why I highlighted that, and I think that that's an allegory. And then later on in lines 29, my bad, through 30, I highlighted memories rise out of me like a buzz of flies from a carcass. So yeah, that it's a simile, obviously, but it also combines some word choice, especially with the comparison of memories flying out of her and buzzing of flies from a carcass. That is not the most pleasant words she could have used. She could have used something totally different, but she didn't. And she didn't for a reason. And it's because she wanted to really convey how awful this was for her, how awful this entire experience was for Orleana and her relationship with her husband and her daughters as well. Later on in the lines 37 and 38, I highlighted Africa and I kept company for a while and then parted ways as if we were both party to relations with a failed outcome. This is kind of like either an extended metaphor or personification, really more personification, because she's giving the entire country of Africa a human trait that kept her company, that they hung out and then they parted ways, like they were both party to relations with a failed outcome. There is a simile in that phrase too. So it's like a simile and personification in the same sentence. And it just kind of emphasizes how lonely she was. Like, she had to keep company with the things around her that weren't necessarily people. It could have been the nature around her. It could have been what she had in their housing, their lodging, whatever they had. Anyone that she met that didn't hate her because she was related to Nathan Price, because a lot of people hated Nathan Price during this time just because he was so forceful with everything. And then down at the bottom, starting at line 43, my bad, and then going on to the end of the highlighting, is an entire slew of rhetorical questions, like, what is the conqueror's wife if not a conquest herself? For that matter, what is he? When he rides in to vanquish the untouched tribes, don't you think they fall down with desire before those sky-colored eyes, and itch for a turn with those horses and those guns? She's questioning what has just happened, like all of the stuff that has happened in Africa in the past year or so. When she asks, what is the conqueror's wife if not a conquest herself? I think that this is kind of talking about her relationship with her husband, Nathan, who is the Baptist preacher, like I said. And he is also he's being portrayed in this specific example as a conqueror, trying to conquer all of these different African tribes to convert them to Christianity and believe in the things they do and live the way they do. And the conquest herself part, I think, is like leading to kind of just it's just kind of like leading towards him also getting Orleana on board with his decisions, because obviously she wasn't on board with all of them, especially when they wanted to leave. And he said no, but everyone else said yes. And that wasn't really good for her. Nathan has been trying to really get Orleana on board with what he's doing and how he's going about doing it. And it's been a conquest. It really has been a conquest. When he rides in to vanquish the untouched tribes, don't you think they fall down with desire before those sky-colored eyes and itch for a turn with those horses and those guns? This talks about why she's kind of confused and puzzled, or really just shocked that the Congolese responded to the sermons and their efforts in the way that they did. Because she was like, why didn't they like kneel before us, like the sky-colored eyes leading to like blue eyes in like Caucasian people, because these people were white at the time, or they were white. And at the time, like racial relations throughout the entire world, this was during the late 50s. So this was like right before the civil rights movement started to pick up. And so Orleana thinks that like Caucasian people are absolutely superior to any other thing, because that's how white people in the American South thought. That's how they thought at the time. And so she was like, why didn't they like bow before us? Because we are people from the United States. We are from a very developed country. We're white, blah, 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 blah. Why didn't they like want to ride our horses and like touch our guns and stuff? Because she thought that it would have been a totally foreign concept to them, that they were living in this untouched world where technology hadn't even grazed the area of the Congo, when obviously it had. They had seen those things before. They had seen horses, and they had seen guns, and they had seen other people besides like their own tribe. They'd like communicated with other races and other ethnicities, nationalities, blah, 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 blah. So she was really, really confused as to why she like that they reacted the way they did. And that just kind of also leads her to think, where did I go wrong? Where did we go wrong in going about preaching the word of God to these people? Like, what happened? So that is what I annotated for this passage. There were a couple things that I didn't highlight because I forgot. Like right after the Africa personification simile example, like right after the sentence after, or say I was afflicted with Africa, like a bout of a rare disease from which I've not managed a full recovery. And that's just kind of talking about how terrible Africa was when she was there and all the stuff that happened, and kind of like a reference to maybe like PTSD, that like she hasn't fully recovered from what's happened. So yeah, that's what I annotated for this. I have come up with 2 multiple choice questions that you can answer, or we're going to answer together. When I pull up the questions, and I'm going to give you time to answer them. If you need me to flip back to the passage, let me know. I'll be happy to do that. Just let me know in the chat. And then put your answer in the chat also, because I'll also go over why answers are right and my answers are wrong. So in lines 8 to 14, it can be inferred that Orleana Price, A, is enjoying being with her children, B, believes her children hate her, C, wishes her children paid attention to her more, and D, is explaining the details of her shipwreck arrival in Africa. So that is the second paragraph. Not 8. It's supposed to be 9. I'm so sorry. It's supposed to be 9. So start at 9. If you need me to flip back to the answers, let me know once you've read that, and then put your answer in the chat. Okay, I don't know if you guys are stumped or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and go over the answers. So answer choice A is that Orleana Price is enjoying being with her children. If we go back to the passage at line 9, it says, I'd washed up there on the riptide of my husband's confidence and the undertow of my children's needs. Undertow isn't exactly something that you should look for. It's not, you should be careful of an undertow because it'll pull you out to sea and probably kill you. So obviously the word undertow has a negative connotation to it. So she is not enjoying being with her children at that time. B is believing that her children hate her. This could be a possible answer given what the passage reads, that her firstborn and her youngest tried to shed her like a husk. That's not very nice, is it? Tried to, no, Mom, we don't need you anymore. We're good. If we go back and look, my firstborn and my baby both tried to shed me like a husk from the start. And then it says, and the twins came with a fine interior sight from which they could simply look past me at everything more interesting. So this could allude to the correct answer, but we'll go through the rest and explain why others are right and wrong. So answer choice C is that Orleana Price wishes her children paid attention to her more. Again, if we go back, it talks about how they didn't really pay attention to her. They shed her like a husk, like I said, or like she said in the passage. And then the twin daughters that she has, the other two, like the middle children, kind of could literally paid attention to everything else. So this could also be a possible answer. We just have to compare the two and figure out which one is the best answer. And then answer D is explaining the details of her shipwreck arrival in Africa. I have already explained the use of diction in the passage at the very beginning, like she was washed up there with the riptide and the undertow. Those are all diction words. They're not, she wasn't actually on a ship. She didn't shipwreck in Africa, so this is not the right answer. So we are between B and C at this point. So when we go back to the passage, it talks about how they like I said, the firstborn and the baby both tried to shed me like a husk from the start, and the twins came with a fine interior sight from which they could simply look past me at everything more interesting. And while you could say that she believes that her children hate her, it doesn't outwardly say that they hate her, that they paid attention to anything else. So the correct answer for this question would be C. Okay, so I hope all of that made sense and my reasoning behind all of the answers. And so we're going to move on to number 2. In lines 36 through 38, the personification of Africa, like the Africa and I keeping each other company and then parting ways, which I'll go back to in a minute, leads readers to believe that A, Orleana wishes Africa were a person she could talk to. B, Orleana was lonely during her time in Africa. C, this is meant to represent a falling out Orleana had with someone. Or D, Orleana had a great time in Africa. So I will go back, and it is lines 37 and 38. I don't know why I put 36. My bad. I'll give you a minute to read that and then put your answer for the chat if you know what the answer is or if you're still here. And then I'll go over it like I did with the first one. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and go over it. B is the right answer. Congrats, you did it. To be fair, this was a little bit of an easier question, and I kind of did that on purpose to kind of show as an example what kind of like reasoning we should go through when you're looking at all the answer choices that you have. So I'll just go through all of them and explain why everyone is right and why everyone is wrong. So Answer choice A. Orleana wishes Africa were a person she could talk to. I get how people could conclude that this was an answer if they briefly read over the passage, like skimmed it and saw Africa and I kept company. And we're like, oh, great, awesome, that's the answer. But if you read the rest of the phrase or the sentence, that's not the right answer, because it talks about they parted ways as if we were both parties to relations with a failed outcome. So Orleana does not wish Africa were a person she could talk to, unfortunately. B was the correct answer. Orleana was lonely during her time in Africa, and that it was a pretty obvious answer, to be fair. But like, if we go back and like when I explained all my annotations, Orleana and Africa kept company because she had nobody else to talk to. She had nothing else to do. So she kept company with the surroundings that she had around her. So that's the correct answer. Answer choice C was supposed to be the like tiebreaker question, I guess, that this is meant to represent a falling out Orleana had with someone. Because Africa and I kept company for a while and then parted ways. This could possibly allude to the relationship that Orleana had with her husband, Nathan, because they were kind of pretty much estranged at the end of the book, or at the end of the passage, really, because this passage takes place in one of the final chapters. So that could possibly allude to how Orleana feels about her relationship with her husband completely falling apart. And that's no good. So, but that is not the right answer, because answer choice B is a better answer. And that's what College Board is looking for. They're looking for the better answer. And then answer choice D, Orleana had a great time in Africa. If you even looked at the passage remotely, this is not the right answer at all. At all. This is not the right answer. And I put that on there as kind of like a gimme. So, yeah, so those are the questions I came up with that passage. If you aren't reading it for class, I highly recommend checking out the Poisonwood Bible. It's a great, great book. Really, really interesting read. It's long, but it's so, so worth it. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward into the College Board example. This is a very, very long passage. This is the one of the ones from the 2012 AP Lit exam from the College Board that they released online. So I took one of these passages and I have this and all of the questions for it right here. So we could do a number of things. I know it might be kind of hard to read because it's so small on your screen, but let me know if you would like for me to kind of explain like I did with the first one, or let you try it on your own, because I am happy to do either. Yeah, I can totally read it. I think what I'm going to actually do is kind of read the question and then read the lines that you're supposed to read. Because for the first question, I don't know if I can zoom in. Oh, no, I cannot zoom in. So number 15 says, in context, the language of this water in lines 1 and 2 is best understood to mean the A, indications of change in the motion of the river, B, signals of approaching riverboats, C, indicators of the fastest channels in the river, D, characteristics of life on the river, and E, movement of fish and fowl over the current. Sorry. And lines 1 and 2 say that this is what it says. It just says, now when I had mastered the language of this water and had come to know every trifling feature. So he got to know the water, basically. So can you read the answer choices, or do I need to read them again, or can you just go ahead and answer it? Okay, awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and let you answer the question to the best of your ability, and then I'm going to go over why the answers are right and wrong, like I did with the previous questions that I made. Okay, so you answered D. That is actually not the right answer. I honestly probably would have put B myself. But the answer is actually A, the indications of change in the motion of the river. This is a really tricky question, to be fair. I hate this question. I'll go over why A is right in a minute, but we're going to go through every other answer choice before I get there, because it's the first one. B, signals of approaching riverboats. It doesn't talk about riverboats anywhere within the first 5 lines of the passage. So obviously that won't be the right answer. Indicators of the fastest channels in the river. It doesn't talk about channels either. So, and if you look at like neighboring sentences and stuff, it doesn't talk about channels. So that can't be the right answer. D, I totally see why you answered D, because of I mastered the language of the water and had come to know every trifling feature, because language is personification in this circumstance. But it doesn't really expand on that past language. And I guess kind of trifling feature, but features can be parts of human things, or like living things, or non-living things, like a feature of a water bottle, or a stuffed animal, or in this case, a river. So E, movement of fish and fowl along the current, doesn't talk about currents, doesn't talk about fish, doesn't talk about fowl. So that's not the right answer. So the answer is A. It's talking about the indications of change in the motion of the river, because when I saw this answer, I was like, interesting. But I kind of looked at it and I understood why that was the right answer eventually. It talks about how he mastered the language of the water, and the language being how it moved, motion of the water, like how it moved, how it behaved, how like the push and pull of the currents like react with the water, and if there are any dips or like rapids through the river, if he kind of figured out how those worked. So the correct answer is A, indications of change in the motion of the river. This is a super hard question, and I don't like it. So this is kind of like a follow-up question, number 16, which are the worst kind, because if you aren't sure about the first one, you aren't really sure about the second one. So number 16 says, by learning the language of the water, the speaker gains A, command of a riverboat, but loses the innocence of youth. B, pride in his profession, but loses a broader interest in the world. C, technical knowledge, but loses an appreciation of river's beauty. D, awareness of the river's dangers, but loses a sense of confidence. And E, assurance of his abilities, but loses respect for the river's might. So what I would recommend for this question, I will read what I think is necessary to answer this question. So I'm going to start at the very beginning and go until I think you have enough information. Now, when I had mastered the language of this water and had come to know every trifling feature that bordered the great river as familiarly as I knew the letters of the alphabet, I made a valuable acquisition. But I had lost something too. I had lost something which could never be restored to me while I lived. All the grace, the beauty, the poetry had gone out of the majestic river. So based on what I just read, which is the first 8 lines of the passage, go ahead and answer question 16, and then I'll go over it just like I have with the other ones. Okay, B or C? Awesome. So the correct answer is C. So you kind of got like half right. So the correct answer is C, technical knowledge, but loses an appreciation of the river's beauty. And this is completely stemmed from the part where it said, I had lost something which could never be restored to me while I lived. All the grace, all the beauty, the poetry had gone out of the majestic river. So he lost the appreciation for the river's beauty, because he said that all of the poetry and the beauty, the grace, it had gone out of the majestic river. Obviously, just by looking and learning how it worked doesn't literally strip the river of everything beautiful that it holds. it's all mental. So basically what this is saying is that mentally, after learning how the river functions and flowed and behaved, for some reason, the beauty of the river is completely gone for him for some reason. So, A, we're going to go over the answer choices. Sorry. A, command of a riverboat, but loses the innocence of youth. Doesn't talk about youth. Doesn't talk about a riverboat either. So that can't be the right answer. I guess I could see why people, if you breezed over it and saw the word restored to me while I lived in line 6, that could possibly be like an, okay, maybe this is the answer kind of answer if you totally just skimmed through it because you're running out of time. Pride in his profession, but loses a broader interest in the world. I kind of get where the whole broader interest for the world came from, because of he talked about the grace and the beauty had gone from the majestic river. Maybe it was gone from a lot of other things too, like the trees and the fields and the flowers and the ocean or whatever. But oops, sorry. It doesn't ever talk about his profession. It just kind of he made it a valuable acquisition after he learned how the river behaved. So that is not the correct answer, but I feel like that would be the tiebreaker answer. D, the awareness of the river's dangers, but loses a sense of confidence. It doesn't really talk about the river being dangerous in the beginning of the passage, so I don't think that would be the right answer, and doesn't talk about confidence either, so that can't be the right answer. E, assurance of his abilities, but loses respect for the river's might. This could also be a maybe this is right, maybe kind of answer. The assurance of his abilities, maybe just because he's figured out how the river works and behaves and functions. But loses respect for the river's might, maybe because of the whole like losing something about the river in his mind, like losing all the grace and whatever. So that could maybe be an answer, but like I said previously, College Board wants you to pick the best answer. So the best answer in this particular circumstance is C. I hope that totally made sense in the way that I described that. So do you want me to move on to more questions so you can practice, or do you understand the process that I think people need to go through to answer these kinds of questions? Because a lot of the later questions refer to the entire passage as a whole, and I have about 5 minutes left of my stream. So yeah, what would you like to do? Because I am completely open to anything that you need. Awesome. So these are some of the other questions. So if you want to take a look at those and kind of identify what other kinds of questions may pop up on your exam in May. I cannot believe how close that is coming. It talks about question 18 mentions literary devices, and that's why I said that underlining literary devices in the annotating process was pretty important, because then you can go back and look at those and pick your best answer. In question 19, it talks about the word somber and what its best meaning is. Now this, with these kinds of questions, what I personally do with these questions is I take each of the answer choices and I put it in place of the word in the phrase. So I would put serious in front or in place of somber when I was reading the question. So I could make my best answer based off of that. And then the second one, or number 20, focuses on a lot of the second paragraph. So you'd have to actually read the whole thing to really get the answer for that one. Same with 21. It talks about contrasting the moods from the first paragraph and the second, just kind of comparing those and talk really how it's presented and how it makes the narrator feel, how it makes the reader feel. These questions are kind of difficult, but they just take some careful analysis. 22 is a weird question. I've actually never seen one like this before. used in lines 38 and 39. Should is best interpreted to mean could, ought to, would, might, or had to. Again, like question 19, I would replace should with these answer choices and see which one flows and fits the best to the situation. And then 23 is a very vague question. These pop up a lot on the exam because it refers to the entire passage, which means you have to read the whole thing. It just talks about what the passage primarily suggests. And you really just have to get a grasp on the entire passage to answer this question. So lesson recap, woohoo! So time efficiency, read the annotation, or read the question, not annotation, I can't read either. Read the question before reading the passage, answer specific questions first so you don't waste all of your time reading the passage, and freaking annotate the passage because it will save your life. Annotation, underline literary terms, find phrases that line up with the answers, anything else that stands out to you. Also, what I find really helpful with both multiple choice and essay is underlining parts of the question about what it's asking you to do, so you don't get in a bunch of like jumbles in your head. That's really helpful in essays. Picking an answer. Read your options super duper carefully, use process of elimination like we had gone through before, and choose the best answer because College Board's going to give you 5 correct answers and only 1 can be right. Are there any questions or comments that I can comment on or answer any questions about anything that you're still a little bit unsure of, or just questions about the multiple choice section in general? That's great. I'm so happy that you learned a bunch. I really hope that this helped you in multiple choice. Like I said earlier at the very beginning, multiple choice is not easy. It is so difficult, and you really just have to practice to get in the swing of it. I'm so glad this helped. I hope you have a great night. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, I'm doing another stream about question 2, thesis and introduction, on March 2nd. And of course, if you're taking any other classes, AP courses, check out Fiveable, check out the schedule for any streams that could be helpful for you. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great night. Bye.